Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2600 Year Diary. I'm Jay Marcus, and joining me on remote is Brian Zeno, founder and co-author with me here at the site.
Hello.
Hi there, sir. How are you?
Good.
Good. Glad to hear you.
Glad to be here, kind of.
Well, always a pleasure. Now, here at the 2600 Year Diary, we're watching the entirety of classic Doctor Who in the order in which it aired. You can find our weekly reviews at watchingthedoctor.com. Now, we're now at the end of the first series, or season, depending on which side of the pond you're from. And it's time to look back on what the year has brought us. So, Brian, the show is called Doctor Who. It comes right off the bat. It's the first thing you see recognizably in the show. But at least for the first season, the Doctor wasn't exactly the star of the show. So who would you say is the greatest standout character so far? Who owned the season for you?
It depends on the story we're talking about, but if I had to pick one person overall for the season, it would actually be Miss Barbara Wright. Because I think she got the greater bulk of scenes that were intended to be good and that she nailed. I think that the other three, Hartnell comes a close second though. The Doctor himself does come a close second. So while I think they intended Ian to be the hero, I think the Doctor wound up being a main character and Barbara was good.
See, now I would actually
very, very good.
I'd have to agree with you, honestly, because I would say of all the characters there, she seemed to grow the most. And she was fighting this feeling on the show of backwards and forwards and backwards. Like one week the Doctor would get to be nicer, but then the next week he'd be curmudgeonly, like completely, like almost mean and hateful in the next episode.
Yes.
Ian would go from being brave and understanding to just sort of the hired muscle. Susan,
understandable given the conflict of having two male leads.
Very true. And of course, as you pointed out, Susan just spent most of the season screaming.
Yeah, poorly written character, alas, who started out with such promise.
Yeah, well, that was the best part. Was in the first episode, you got this feeling that she was sort of a seasoned, woman, a girl of time, who's done this before. And then in every
Wander in the fourth dimension.
Yeah, and then every subsequent episode, it was like, what do we do now?
Yeah. She'll scream, she'll cower, she'll cringe, she'll take refuge in Barbara's bosom.
Yes.
Sorry.
I think it would have been it would have been a different show if that had actually happened, I think.
Indeed.
Well, now we certainly had somewhat shorter episodes and our longer episodes, full of all kinds of wonderful moments and not so wonderful moments. What was your favorite moment of the first season?
I think my favorite individual moment of the first season would be the argument between the Doctor and Barbara in the Aztecs, wherein he explains to her why you can't rewrite history, not even one line, and that sort of defined was a sort of story-defining moment to me. A sort of here's what we're sort of about in a way, which is. In a way, it wound up not being so much what it was about, but it was a very enjoyable moment to see, and it was a moment when I really felt like I was seeing something special on screen.
See, I gotta say, actually, that's my runner-up, because my first, because I think that my favorite one is an extension of that scene, sort of not an extension, but a precursor to that scene from the episode that you don't like, Edge of Destruction.
Yes.
Where
yes.
But it's the same two characters. It's the Doctor and Barbara at the end, as the Doctor comes to realize that he really undervalued her, and this is to me, it's a very real moment where he realizes he was wrong, and he has to go and sort of swallow his pride and make amends. And she's not quite buying it. Like she's okay. She accepts his apology, but it's not like, well, okay, Doctor, let's move on. There's a lot of thought and there's a lot of emotion in that scene. And
I can see that too. I mean, it's sad that the scene was adrift in the quagmire that was the rest of that episode, but it's worthy of comment, I suppose.
Well, thank you for that. So I have to ask you, and this is something that I've done a lot of thinking about since since the season came to an end, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
If you were sitting there in 1964, if you're an average viewer either in London or any place, just watching this for the first time, but back in '64, and you saw this every week, and you just got to the end of the first season, not knowing where the show was headed, would you still be watching after the first season was over? Would you still be a viewer?
Ooh, that's an excellent question, and in all honesty, I don't know. I think yes, I would be. And unfortunately, I think that's less to do with any inherent quality in the show, and more to do, which it did have inherent quality, don't get me wrong, but I think it's less to do with any quality or lack thereof in the show, and more to do with there was nothing else like it on TV anywhere in 1964, really.
Right.
And I think that given who I am, I would be enjoying getting even what Doctor Who was giving me in 1964. Yes.
Okay.
Just a guess. You?
Well, you know what? It's in thinking about it, probably, but and I can say this about a lot of shows that I watch now, I think it would be more out of curiosity, in a hopeful sense of curiosity, because the first An Unearthly Child, when we wrote about it, as the first part of that pilot episode had so much promise built into it, and for some reason it didn't deliver for a while. There were some incredible concepts, and you were just waiting for the show to reach its stride.
Right.
And I think
it would, and it stumbled. It would stumble. Yes. Every time you thought it was getting somewhere, it then took a step back.
There was long-winded writing, a lot of padding, and a lot of stuff which, if you bump into episodes, certain episodes that just don't make a lick of sense, or where you're 10 steps ahead of the characters.
True.
A few come to mind in the first season alone.
Keys of Marinus. Oh dear. Oh,
Did you say that out loud? Oh my God. Yes. I didn't even realize. But
on the strength of the first episode, the Aztecs, the last half of the Sensorites, and the last episode of the Reign of Terror, I think I probably would. It would have earned at least a second season shot from me.
It was Reign of Terror, I think, that put me back on the fence. I think after episodes like the Daleks. I like the characters, but it was too ponderous. But after episodes like that, you sort of go, all right, well, if this is going to, which side of the coin are they going to take? The richer episodes are just these long, tedious time fillers.
Right.
Reign of Terror came the closest. It was a great way to end the season because it really said, okay, we can do this. And it was even the first time that they started, real editing and trying to make a proper TV show.
It started to get less stagey, more filmic, if you will.
It's true. Absolutely true.
Yes.
So, before we go, any parting thoughts for the audience?
Looking forward to Season 2. Looking forward to Doctor Who becoming a little more Doctor Who as we get into it. I think, based on knowing what we know about where the show goes, and given that the upcoming season has fewer episodes that we've had a chance to see before, given that so many of them are lost and we now have reconstructions, I think Season 2 is going to be a very interesting adventure.
Well, I certainly, on behalf of myself and our reading audience and viewing audience, I certainly hope you're right. But
me too.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? The show went on for, 26 years, so certainly there's definitely a light at the end of this tunnel.
There's some there, definitely.
Well, I'd like to thank 2600 Year Diary founder Brian Zeno for joining us today. Thank you, Brian.
My pleasure.
And remember, you can find all of our classic Doctor Who reviews at watchingthedoctor.com. I'm Jay Marcus. Thank you for joining us, and please keep watching the Doctor right here with us. We'll see you next time.